Good morning, everyone. Today's topic of discussion is the synapse. So, first of all, as we go through everything, let's go through the definition of synapse. But first of all, the term synapse, where did it come from? This term synapse was first introduced by Sherrington in 1924, and he described it as the site of contiguity. That means the contact without continuity. But otherwise, if we talk in a simple language, what synapse means, we can define it as the junction between the two neurons is called synapse. It is the junction where the axon of one cell or where the axon or some other portion of one cell terminates on the dendrites or some other portion of another cell. Then there are two terms called as presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron. The neuron which sends messages is called presynaptic neuron, whereas the neuron which receives messages is called postsynaptic neuron. We will be discussing about both these terms later on in details. But before we go ahead, let's have a look on the structure of synapse, which we are going to discuss in details now. The structure of synapse varies considerably throughout the nervous system. However, the general features of the synapses comprise the following structures. Number one is synaptic knob. It is a terminal bulbous, that means the knob-like ending of the presynaptic axon, which is devoid of neurofilaments, and it contains, number one, synaptic vesicles. The presynaptic cytoplasm contains vesicles, which are approximately 50 nanometer in diameter and are gathered near the membrane. These vesicles contain small packets of chemical transmitter responsible for excitation or maybe inhibition of the neuron next in the chain. And these vesicles are transported down the axon along the microtubules in the axon. Then it also has mitochondria, which contains plenty of ATP. Then there are microtubules, and then there is something called as presynaptic membrane, which we were talking earlier. It is a nerve membrane which is in close approximation with the membrane of the postsynaptic cell. Then comes another part of the structure of synapse, which is called subsynaptic and postsynaptic membrane. The surface of the cell membrane involved in the synapse is called the subsynaptic membrane, and the remainder of the motor neuron cell membrane is called the postsynaptic membrane. Receptors, which we will talk about later in another presentation also, receptors are usually located on the subsynaptic membrane. Okay, and then there is another very important part which is called synaptic cleft. It is a gap of 20 to 30 nanometer that separates the presynaptic membrane and postsynaptic membrane. Now comes the classification of synapse. There are two methods to classify the synapse. Number one is anatomical classification, another one is physiological classification, which is also called functional classification. Anatomical classification is based on the type of synapses and their anatomic features, which is divided into type 1 and type 2. And physiological classification is based on functional transmission, and that is why the synapses are divided into chemical synapses, electrical synapses and conjoint synapses. Let's have a look. So anatomical classification is depending upon the ending of axon. Exosomatic synapse, exodendritic synapse, exoaxonal synapse and dendrodendritic synapse. So exosomatic synapse means axon of one neuron ends on soma of another neuron. Exodendritic synapse means axon of first neuron terminates on dendrite of next neuron. Exoaxonal means the axon of one neuron terminates on axon of another neuron. Okay. Dendrodendritic is quite rare. It is not found generally. This is how it looks like. So we can clearly have a differentiating features between exosomatic, exoaxonic and exodendritic synapses. This was the anatomical classification. Now coming to the physiological classification, which is depending on the basis of transmission of impulses. And that is how the synapse is classified as chemical, electrical and conjoint. Conjoint is nothing but synapses where transmission is both chemical and electrical. Okay. So majorly we need to understand between chemical synapse and electrical synapse. This is how the diagram shows the differences between electrical synapse and chemical synapse. Let's discuss about it in details. So chemical synapse, the first one. Synapses where the impulse in the presynaptic cell causes a secretion of chemical neurotransmitter. These are called the chemical synapses. Impulse in the presynaptic cell causes the secretion of chemical neurotransmitter, which reaches the postsynaptic and presynaptic neurons because of the presence of a space called synaptic cleft between the two neurons. Impulse transmission in chemical synapse is always in one direction, and synaptic cleft is present in this. Whereas if we talk about electrical synapse, synapses where the transmission are electrical, that means the electrical synapse. In this, there is continuity between the presynaptic and postsynaptic neurons, and this continuity is provided by the gap junction. So there is direct exchange of ions between the two neurons, and because of this, the action potential reaching the presynaptic terminal produces a potential change in the postsynaptic neuron. A very important feature of the electrical synapse is that there is minimal synaptic delay because of the direct flow of current. Moreover, unlike in the chemical synapse, as we talked earlier, the impulse can be transmitted in either direction through the electrical synapse. Electrical synapse is found not only in the nervous system but also between some non-nervous cells, like the cardiac muscle fibers, smooth muscle fibers of intestine, and the epithelial cells of lens, etc. etc. Let's talk about the functions of synapse. The main function of the synapse is to transmit the impulses, that is, action potential from one neuron to another. However, some of the synapses inhibit these impulses, and so the impulses are not transmitted to the postsynaptic neuron. That is why the synapses are of two types: excitatory synapses, which transmit the impulses, that means the excitatory function, and another one is the inhibitory synapses, which inhibit the transmission of impulses, that is inhibitory function. So excitatory function, here is a flowchart how it works. So what happens is, when the action potential reaches the presynaptic axon terminal, the voltage gated calcium channels at the presynaptic membrane are opened. Now what happens is, the calcium ions enter the axon terminal from extracellular fluid. The calcium ions cause the fusion of synaptic vesicles with the cell membrane, and there is release of neurotransmitter substance from the vesicles by means of exocytosis, which we have already discussed earlier. The neurotransmitter, which is excitatory in function, that is excitatory neurotransmitter, it passes through presynaptic membrane and synaptic cleft, and then it reaches the postsynaptic membrane. Now, the neurotransmitter binds with the receptor protein present in the postsynaptic membrane to form the neurotransmitter receptor complex. So now a complex is formed. The neurotransmitter receptor complex, this causes the production of non-propagative electrical potential called excitatory postsynaptic potential, EPSP. It is a very popular term in this context. The most common excitatory neurotransmitter in a synapse is basically used as acetylcholine. Now, how does it develop? What is the mechanism behind the development of EPSP? The neurotransmitter receptor complex increases the permeability of the postsynaptic membrane for sodium, which means this complex causes the opening of ligand-gated sodium channels. Now what happens is, the sodium ions from extracellular fluid, they enter into the synapse or the soma, and as the sodium ions are positively charged, the resting membrane potential inside the soma is altered, because of which the depolarization or EPSP is developed. What are the properties of EPSP? It is confined only to the synapse. It differs from the action potential and is similar to the receptor potential and end plate potential. Main properties of EPSP are: it is non-propagative, it is monophasic, and it does not obey all or none law. What is the importance? What is the significance of EPSP? It is not transmitted into the axon of postsynaptic neuron. However, it causes development of action potential in the axon. When the EPSP is strong enough, it causes the opening of voltage-gated sodium channels in the initial segment of axon. Now what happens is, due to the entrance of sodium ions, the depolarization occurs in the initial segment of the axon, and that is why the action potential develops. And from here the action potential spreads to the other segment of the axon. This was all about the excitatory function. Now coming to the inhibitory function of the synapse. So two different types of inhibition occurs in the synapse, which are postsynaptic inhibition and presynaptic inhibition. Majorly it happens through these two ways. Number one is postsynaptic inhibition. It is also called, it is subdivided into direct and indirect inhibition. It depends on the delivery of an inhibitory chemical by the incoming axons, which hyperpolarizes the subsynaptic membrane. And that is why it is subdivided into direct and indirect inhibition. So first is the direct inhibition. Now inhibition which results due to the stimulation of afferent nerve which passes directly to the motor neurons in the spinal cord. That is the direct inhibition. It occurs due to the release of an inhibitory neurotransmitter from presynaptic terminal instead of excitatory neurotransmitter substance. Right? Inhibitory neurotransmitter substance acts on postsynaptic membrane by binding with the receptor. The transmitter receptor complex opens the ligand gated potassium channels instead of sodium channels, due to which what happens is potassium ions pass out into the extracellular fluid. Following which chloride channels also open up, which is followed by the influx of chloride ions, leading to hyperpolarization. And that is how this is called inhibitory postsynaptic potential. Okay. Second is the indirect inhibition. Indirect inhibition is the inhibition which occurs due to the effects of previous postsynaptic neuron discharge. For example, the postsynaptic cell can be refractory to excitation because it has just fired and is in its refractory period. Or for example, after hyperpolarization, it is also less excitable. In spinal neurons, after repeated firing, this after hyperpolarization may be large and prolonged. Then there is a term called Renshaw cell inhibition, or it is also called as negative feedback inhibition. This occurs in spinal cord. The anterior nerve root consists of nerve fibers leaving the spinal cord. These nerve fibers arise from the alpha motor neurons in anterior gray horn of the spinal cord and reach the effector organ, which is the muscles. Some of the fibers called collaterals end in Renshaw cells instead of leaving the spinal cord. Renshaw cells, where are they situated? They are situated in between the motor neurons. When motor neurons send motor impulses, some of the impulses reach the Renshaw cell by passing via collaterals. Now the Renshaw cell is stimulated. Renshaw cell in turn sends inhibitory impulses to alpha motor neurons so that the discharge from motor neurons is reduced. This is how it works. This was about postsynaptic inhibition. We are talking about inhibitory function, so the next is presynaptic inhibition. This type of inhibition often occurs at the presynaptic terminals before the signals ever reaches the synapse. It is usually caused by discharge of inhibitory interneurons. It is induced by exoaxonal synapses. Here what happens is afferent fibers can influence each other by means of collaterals, which innervate the interneurons. And these then form the synaptic contacts with the presynaptic terminals of the other afferent fibers. The interneuron which cause presynaptic inhibition that lie at the base of the dorsal horn. Okay, this was about presynaptic inhibition. Now coming to the properties of synapse. So first is the convergence and divergence. Convergence. When many presynaptic neurons terminate on a single postsynaptic neuron, it is called convergence. On the other hand, when one presynaptic neuron terminates on many postsynaptic neurons, it is known as divergence. Second property we are going to talk about is law of forward conduction, or it is also called as one-way conduction. Synapses permit conduction of impulses in one direction only. Okay, according to Bell-Megendy law, the impulses are transmitted only in one direction in synapse, that is from presynaptic neuron to postsynaptic neuron. This is what is meant by one-way conduction. Third is synapses are more susceptible to hypoxia than the nerve fibers. Next is fatigue. Fatigue occurs at the synapse. How? It is due to the depletion of neurotransmitter substance called acetylcholine. Now what happens is, during continuous muscular activity, the synapse forms the seat of fatigue along with the bed cells. BEDS, B-E-T-Z. Bed cells present in the motor area of the frontal lobe of the cerebral cortex. After producing the action, this neurotransmitter is destroyed by acetylcholinesterase. Okay. Then there is synaptic delay. Synaptic delay, when an impulse reaches the presynaptic terminals, that time there is a gap of about 0.5 millisecond before a response is obtained in the postsynaptic neuron. That delay is called synaptic delay. It is due to the time it takes for the synaptic mediator to be released and to act on postsynaptic membrane. This may be due to the time taken for release of neurotransmitter, movement of neurotransmitter from axon terminal to postsynaptic membrane, action of neurotransmitter to open the ionic channels in postsynaptic membrane. By the way, the synaptic delay is one of the causes for the latent period of the reflex activity. Next property is summation. When many number of presynaptic excitatory terminals are stimulated simultaneously, or when single presynaptic terminal is stimulated repeatedly, there is summation or fusion of effects in postsynaptic neuron. That is, there is progressive increase in the excitatory postsynaptic potential. This is called summation. Summation is majorly of two types, namely spatial summation and temporal summation. Spatial summation occurs when many presynaptic terminals are stimulated simultaneously. Temporal summation occurs when one presynaptic terminal is stimulated repeatedly. Therefore, both spatial summation and temporal summation play an important role in the facilitation of response. Next and last is the synaptic plasticity. Plasticity implies the capability of being easily moduled or changed. Synaptic conduction thus can be increased, that means it can be strengthened, or decreased, that means it can be weakened on the basis of past experience. These changes can be presynaptic or postsynaptic in location, and they play an important role in learning and memory. We can have a look on the diagram as well for showing synaptic plasticity. So this was all about the properties, and that's all about the synapse. We'll discuss about the rest of the portion coming forward in the next presentations. Thank you so much.